I think it comes down to two things. One is, and both came from my father. Um, I guess the one phrase that we've heard again and again as kids, if you aren't true to yourself, then what's the point of doing anything? Otherwise, you're living in this fake land. But the other piece is he was a minister. When I was a young kid, he was a minister when I was growing up. And he was involved with, he co-founded a mission down in Nicaragua, one that lasted all the way through just to the last few years. And what I saw growing up, that the average person, maybe even not even the average person by most people's standards, these are individuals that have the least, have the capability of doing so many great things. Are people that are around us, people that we might deem as being perhaps less educated, experienced. We overlook them and say, because they don't have the pedigree that we're used to, they don't have the skills, they aren't going to be able to lead to success. That's not necessarily the case. What is it that we're giving them? Have we given them the benefit of the doubt? Have we given them the framework to be successful? Encourage them to be successful, draw from them, and it's amazing what you do. And so frequently, it's those individuals that get overlooked, and it's those individuals that lead to the breakthrough ideas. It's those individuals that lead to success. And without them, you aren't going to have it. I'm going to borrow shamelessly an equation. I'm not sure if, are you familiar with Doug Hall? He drew this little equation. I don't know if you can see it.
Uh-huh.
Breakthrough ideas are the result of some sort of stimulus. But that could be internal, that could be external. The change agent that can turn the prism enough to say, we're looking at something slightly differently. Raised to the exponential power of D, big D, diversity of thought. Not invented here, it's big company versus small company, internal versus external. It's manufacturing versus service sector. The public sector versus private sector. It's HR versus finance or engineering. It's disparate ideas. The buzzkill, though, the killer is F times E, fear times ego. So you have this exponential effect of diversity on breakthrough ideas. It's these types of things. It's fear and ego that kill it. So in answer to your question, it's the fear and ego that are going to kill transformation. Making a stand is one thing. That on a regular basis, you're going to come across people that say, you know what, you don't understand. We're different. We do things differently here. We're special. We have our own way. We have our own special sauce here. We've tried it and it didn't succeed. It failed. My bonus is not tied to that, so I'm not going to do it. And I think so much of it is there's another formula that goes something like this. If in fact your conviction, your belief, is less than the resistance, nothing is going to happen. It's kind of like working out. If you aren't convinced that this next push-up is going to really help you, you aren't going to do it. But there's resistance there. There's tension there. You aren't going to do that last push-up. So you raised the point. If you don't believe, if you don't have that conviction, if you don't say, I believe in it enough to the point where you'd be willing to do it for free. Is it so important that you would say, you know what, I'll forego any gain. In fact, I'll put myself at risk. I'll expose myself. If you aren't prepared to say that, nothing's going to happen. Wouldn't it be crazy if we could take the best ideas from a community, leverage them so that the community can share best practices? And we put together this group called Lean Communities, whereby we use this equation right here, where we brought together the manufacturing company, the local hospital, the local bank, even the local government, perhaps the local school system, to play ball together in the sandbox. And what was interesting, basically what we did is we said, we can teach a specific skill set that can lead to organizational improvement. That's all fine and good, but the magic in this exercise was the collaboration. The challenge was having, frequently it was the ego of the large corporation saying, you know, why would I share with this small mom and pop shop when they might not have the pedigree that we have? They might not have the resources. What could they possibly teach us? Or you would have the local government saying, you know, we have structured rules, structured ways of doing things. We have to abide by regulations, and companies can do whatever they want to do. How can we learn from them? After all, we're a government. What can we learn from the private sector? So it was interesting. The small companies had an ego issue, and it was more fear. We don't have the bandwidth. How can we possibly contribute anything? So everybody came, all these disparate groups of participants came to the table with a certain amount of head trash, tied up in fear and ego. And it was only by pure exposure, by pure transparency, that common vision around, it was a common conviction of what's important for the community. If we in fact share, what company has the best process for hiring? What company has the best process for closing the books? What organization has the best process for procurement? Wouldn't it be cool if the bank can learn from the hospital? The manufacturing company could teach something to the local government. The local government can in fact teach something to the local bank. So you have this web of interconnected ideas, which gets to that concept of diversity. It was those communities that were prepared to do something that would actually listen. Those communities where unemployment, they were challenged with unemployment, they weren't meeting their budgets, they were laying folks off, they were looking at cutting services, they were the ones that were zoned out. The mayors were completely zoned out. And so I guess, in answer to your question, you can't change everybody. You absolutely cannot change everybody. Change occurs frequently through a conviction that is reinforced by a groundswell or a shift in a critical mass of people. It's not one person. It's not a CEO necessarily. It's how do you frame a groundswell? How do you frame a condition for the critical mass to say, I believe in that? There was one community where the mayor said, we don't want to be involved. It's too much risk. So you had the local merchants that, again, a group of small business owners en masse came together and said, we're going to do it. Don't worry about City Hall. Don't worry about them. We're going to do this. And they all came together. We had a bookstore owner come together with somebody representing the Chamber of Commerce, coming together with the local hospital, coming together with a local dairy company, all coming together. And what they found was there were actually many commonalities. They all were concerned about what is their payroll? What are they doing for their employees? Their concerns, again, recessionary, they were concerned about what does their future look like? What are they doing? And so you saw them sharing best practices around hiring. You saw them sharing, at this time, more importantly, best practices around retention. What are they going to do to retain their employees? Or what are they going to do to incentivize their employees to do more with less? So it was what we did is, in essence, created a community forum of dialogue using skills that they taught one another. Ariba found itself a year ago in a situation where all of a sudden we went from recession to hypergrowth, where historically they hadn't been looking at how do we recruit individuals. It was more how do we keep those that we have, how do we avoid having a negative impact on our workforce, all of a sudden we need those individuals. How do we grow quickly in a short period of time? It was kind of cool when you have the CFO of the company saying, you know what, talent is our #1 needle mover. We all need to be doing this. It was kind of neat when you have this SVP of HR, who was also the head of M&A, saying, we want nothing but big, bold ideas. But the way to do that was to think outside the box. The way to do that was to get away from fear, get away from ego, strip away that ego. You know, we're sharp at we're engineers, therefore we're smart. We're engineers, therefore we know we can engineer our way out of this paper bag. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, how do we play together? How does engineering work with those in finance? How does finance work with those in HR? And how do we create dialogue around improvement? And during that period of time, through that collaboration, we saw, again, the volume has doubled. The cycle time has decreased. Our cost per hire has gone down. Our customer sat is now, it's gone from 85% to 93%. So all of those metrics are in the right direction, but we couldn't have done that without going back to that philosophy of embracing disparate groups. How do you collaborate? How do you get people that you previously wouldn't have played ball with to play ball with you? How do you create a common framework for discussion? I think it comes down to two questions. One is, to what degree does your own fear and does your own ego limit disruptive change? You know, the moment you say, I know it, you don't. So, we talked about having conviction and having confidence. I'm a huge, you can't do it if you don't have it. But at the same time, I think there's this continuous loop, this feedback loop you need to get into. You know, I believe in 360 feedback. Let's gut check. Am I doing the right thing? And you have to ask that on a regular basis. Otherwise, you get stuck. You get stuck in your own silo. So, again, ask yourself on a regular basis: is my own ego, is my own bravado, is my own confidence limiting change? Is my fear limiting change? So that's one point. I think that the other piece is I might know a few things. I certainly don't know everything. So, to what degree am I willing to share the brain power of other people that I know, and perhaps people that I don't know? So, my perspective is finite. My perspective plus your perspective is that much more robust. Don't be afraid to engage with other individuals that are very different than you. In fact, it's better that they're different than you. Don't engage in, I would encourage you to avoid getting feedback from somebody that will agree with you on everything. Look, go to your biggest critic. If you can win over your biggest critic, you're halfway there.